Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into one of the most profound mysteries of human existence. What actually happens after we die? For centuries, this was a question answered purely by faith. But today, we're looking at the wild intersection of medical science, astonishing anomalies, and the absolute limits of the human brain. Does the science actually back up the stories of the afterlife? Let's find out.
All right, let's just start right in the operating room. Picture this. It's August 1991 at the Barrow Neurological Institute. A 35-year-old woman named Pam Reynolds is undergoing an incredibly risky brain tumor surgery. Now, to save her life, her surgeons had to do something drastic. They completely stopped her heartbeat, lowered her body temperature, and literally drained the blood from her brain. Clinically speaking, there was absolutely zero brain activity. By all medical definitions, she was completely dead.
But here is the wild part. Despite being in that state, with her eyes physically taped shut and small speakers blocking her ears with loud clicking sounds, Pam miraculously woke up later. And that's not even the real mystery. The mystery is that she flawlessly described the exact shape of the bone-cutting saw the surgeons used. She repeated their conversations from when she was flatlined. She said she watched the entire operation from above her own body. I mean, how in the world did she see and hear this? Was she literally hovering above the table? Now, this isn't just some fringe scientific debate. Just look at the belief in an afterlife globally. We're talking 85% in Indonesia, 70% in the US. The concept of the human soul is practically woven into our global DNA. People across wildly different cultures strongly believe that our consciousness keeps going even after our physical bodies give out. Section 1. Weighing the Human Soul, the 1901 experiment. 21 grams. You might have actually heard that number before, right? It was famously claimed by an American doctor named Duncan McDougall to be the literal physical weight of the human soul as it leaves the body. It became a huge global phenomenon, even inspiring Hollywood movies. So how did he come up with that? Well, his logic was basically this. If the soul exists, it takes up space, and therefore it has to weigh something. He put dying tuberculosis patients on a cot hooked up to a massive industrial scale. He'd watch them right at the exact moment they passed away, and he claimed to record a sudden, unexplained drop in body weight of exactly 21 grams. But, as you can imagine, the scientific community quickly pushed back. Critics pointed out the incredibly obvious that sudden weight loss was probably just the evaporation of water vapor in the breath and sweat upon death. To counter this, McDougall repeated the exact same test on 15 dogs. The result? Zero weight loss. But instead of rethinking his totally flawed methodology, he bizarrely concluded that dogs simply don't have souls. Yikes. Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of Near-Death Experiences, Deciphering the Universal Patterns. Let's fast forward to the 1970s. Dr. Raymond Moody shifted the focus from weighing bodies to actually listening to patients. He coined the famous term near-death experience, or NDE, and found patients universally reporting these exact 5 stages. First, hearing their own death declared. Second, moving through a dark tunnel. Third, floating out of their body, often watching CPR being performed on themselves. Fourth, meeting light beings or deceased relatives. And finally, the life review, where your entire existence flashes before your eyes. It really sounded like a universal roadmap to the afterlife, right? But skeptics found a pretty crucial flaw. If you look at accounts globally, the details of the afterlife change completely depending on your culture. Western patients often report seeing St. Peter at the pearly gates, but in Indian NDEs, patients often report being taken by messengers to Yamaraj, seeing clerks with record books, and literally being sent back to their bodies due to a clerical error. Like, whoops, we have the wrong person. This strongly suggests our brains are just showing us what our culture taught us to expect. Section 3. The Dying Brain Hypothesis, Biology Behind the Visions. This brings us to a major medical reality check. Psychologists like Dr. Susan Blackmore argue we shouldn't view these visions as glimpses of heaven, but just the panicked, predictable hallucinations of a dying organ. The core argument against a floating soul is called the dependence thesis. Basically, it means without an active brain, consciousness simply cannot exist. Every memory, thought, and feeling you have drops perfectly in sync with your physical brain activity. In fact, biology can translate almost all of this magic into desperate survival mechanisms happening right inside your skull. That famous dark tunnel? That's just your oxygen-starved visual cortex firing randomly, making a pinpoint of light surrounded by darkness. That profound sense of deep peace? Just a massive stress-induced release of endorphins. and the life review is simply endorphin-induced seizures triggering rapid memory recall in your temporal lobe. And to prove you don't even need to be dying to see this stuff, researchers looked at fighter pilots. When pilots do extreme maneuvers, gravitational forces pull blood and oxygen away from their brains, causing something called G-lock, or G-force-induced loss of consciousness. The US Navy actually tested this by putting perfectly healthy volunteers into these massive human centrifuges. They spun them until they predictably passed out from a lack of oxygen. And guess what? When they woke up, these totally healthy people reported the exact same dark tunnels, out-of-body sensations, and peaceful feelings that cardiac arrest patients report. It proves the brain can and will trigger these exact visions simply from oxygen deprivation, no actual death required. Which brings us to Section 4, searching for scientific proof, the anomalies that remain. So case closed, right? Biology and G-forces explain it all. Well, not exactly. What about the patients who see and hear things they physically shouldn't be able to? Let's circle back to our unsolved mystery, Pam Reynolds. The dying brain hypothesis totally fails to explain how she knew incredibly specific, verified facts about her surgery. How do you accurately describe a bone-cutting saw as looking like an electric toothbrush, or repeat the doctor saying retractor in place? She even knew her heart was shocked exactly twice, a detail her own lead surgeon didn't even immediately remember. Remember her physical state? 16 degrees, heart stopped, eyes taped, and the absolute kicker? Her ears were blocked with speakers clicking up to 33 times per second. That is as loud as a passing subway train. Hearing a whispered medical conversation over that is clinically impossible. Her renowned surgeon remains completely unable to explain her awareness scientifically to this day. Because of crazy anomalies like Pam's, Dr. Sam Parnia launched a massive experiment to finally test if out-of-body consciousness is real. It was called the AWARE study. Over 1,000 images were hidden on high shelves near the ceilings across 15 different hospitals. The logic is just brilliant. If your soul actually floats up to the ceiling during a cardiac arrest, you'd see the image. If it's just a hallucination in your brain, you wouldn't. So, over 4 years, out of more than 2,000 cardiac arrest patients studied, exactly 0 were able to identify the hidden images upon waking up. Not a single one. This leaves the definitive scientific proof of a floating soul entirely unproven. As we wrap up this explainer, if we look at the big picture, we can see that biology definitely solves most of the puzzle. We can explain the tunnels, the peaceful sensations, and why our visions change based on our religions. But there are still a few profound, glaring anomalies cracking the wall of our scientific understanding. We still cannot definitively explain how a clinically brain-dead patient can accurately describe a hidden surgical tool or recount verified conversations. But ultimately, the research leaves us with this thought. Just because something is unexplained doesn't automatically mean it's supernatural magic. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Centuries ago, lightning was unexplained, and we called it the wrath of the gods. Today, we call it physics. So instead of obsessing over what comes next, shouldn't we focus our energy on making this one life we know we have, right here on this planet, as beautiful as possible? What kind of heaven could we build right here on Earth if we just stopped waiting for the next one?